Boker Tov Givrin. Ma Shlomchem. Still no one's saying Tov Me'od. I keep waiting for that. But thankfully, none of you are saying Ra or Ra Me'od. All right, very bad. So you're doing well. Glad to hear it, glad to see it. We want to begin, as we do each Tuesday, with a devotional meditation on Psalm 103. I've got it up here on the screen where you can see it. Hopefully it'll show up well enough for you there. It is verses 3. We are looking at verses 3 to 4. We looked at verses 1 and 2 last time. And as we read through it here, I'm just going to read through it if you can follow along on the screen or in your copy that you have there in front of you. Le David, that is by David. It's an authorial lamed used here. We know that by its use elsewhere, like in Habakkuk chapter 3. We know that from 2 Samuel chapter 22. We know it from other places in Scripture where we have things that are written by individuals, where we have absolutely no question whatsoever the lamed is used. And therefore we have no question whatsoever when we see it used in the Psalms, unless we're going to be inconsistent, that is. And some people choose to be inconsistent. So you'll find some that will not take this as an indication of authorship, but will say it's according to Davidic style or is for David to be presented to him rather than being by him. It seems to be very inconsistent, though, with the usage in the rest of Scripture, and why should we choose the psalm headings as the only place that we would do this and accept it in the headings that are used elsewhere, like the prayer of Habakkuk in Habakkuk chapter 3, the song of Hezekiah in Isaiah chapter 38, a psalm by David in 2 Samuel 22 that is identical to Psalm 18 in the Psalter. And then we looked at these first two verses last Tuesday. Baraki nafshi eth Yahweh. Bless Yahweh, O my soul. Wekol karavai eth shem kadsho. And all that is inside me, all of my inner being, bless, understood, his holy name. And then Baraki nafshi eth Yahweh. Bless the Lord. Bless Yahweh, O my soul. Wa'al tishkachi. There's our verb shakach. And do not forget kol gamulau. All his rewards or all of his benefits. And then today we're looking at starting at verse 3. Hasoleach. Everyone pronounce it? Hasoleach. Lekol. Eloneki. All right, and this is a cal active participle, masculine singular, with a definite article, hasoleach. The pathak furtive under the cheth is due to the guttural being at the end of the word. But notice the holum and the tsere as the two primary vowel pointings on this, just as it would be under kotel, shomer, kotev, sofer. All of these are cal active participles. Notice that the participles are pointed as nouns, therefore they take articles like nouns. They take noun endings. Im in the masculine plural, a or eth in the feminine singular, ot in the feminine plural. This has no suffix, therefore it's masculine singular. And it can be translated as the one who forgives or the one who is forgiving. Lekal is all. Notice the lamed here is joined together with salach to indicate the direct object. What is it he forgives? And we wouldn't translate it, he is forgiver for or to all your, the key suffix is second feminine singular, because it's referring to the soul, the nephesh, which is a feminine noun. And so just as the verb al tishkahi had that hirik yod ending, so also the feminine, the second feminine singular pronominal suffix has this key ending. And so it's your iniquity or your guilt. And it's referring to the soul. He's addressing his soul. And so Hasoleach is a reference to Yahweh. It's describing him. It's saying who he is, what he does. Notice in the preceding verse we ended with, do not forget all his benefits, all his rewards, all of that which he awards us or awards you, O my soul. And the first thing is that he forgives your iniquity. He forgives your guilt. He is a forgiving God. And the reason for the participle being used is to demonstrate either his continuing or his characteristic action. So how do we determine whether it's characteristic or continuous? Context alone will determine it. And it would appear that it has the idea of characteristic, because we have a list here of characteristic actions of Yahweh for which he is to be praised. And as we'll look through, we will try to resolve that more specifically as we pass through it to find out if it fits characteristic and be translated as a present, he forgives, or whether it's continuous, he is forgiving. All right? So I'll take it for the time being as he is the one, or the one who, just like in Greek when you have an article on a participle, it's translated as a relative clause. The one who forgives all your iniquity, all your guilt. Harophe. Everyone? Harophe. Lekol. Ayaki. Let me pronounce it again. Ayaki. And when we bring that in there, notice that the saluk comes next to the komets as the accented open syllable. It's kept open that way. Therefore, the yod with the schwa under it has to be vocal, and that's why we have ya, yaki. Tachalu, the kibbutz, tachalu ayaki. All right? The one who heals all your illnesses. The one who heals all your illnesses. Here's the first clue we have, that it's a characteristic participle rather than a continuous participle. We are not continuously ill. Therefore, God does not have to be continuously healing us. But he characteristically heals us as we characteristically are afflicted by illnesses from time to time. And so that would be one of the contextual arguments for seeing these as characteristic participles. So he is not only our forgiver, the one who forgives us, he is also our healer. Why these two side by side? Why the spiritual paralleled by the physical? Because the psalmist, here David, by context and by the heading, has experienced a lot of illnesses in his lifetime. We find that out by reading the Psalms. We find out that he had illnesses from time to time that were somewhat serious, even bringing him to bringing him close to death. And we have to keep in mind what it was like to live in those times, and how susceptible people were to disease, and what the life expectancy was. And for David, remember that he was the kind of king who did not like to sit back in the palace while his soldiers were fighting. He often went forth to war with them, and traveled with them, and lived in the field, and was subject to all of those types of things that would be faced by a soldier in the field. The cold nights, the wet of rain, the heat of day, the heat exhaustion and prostration that could occur in various areas of the land at certain times of year. The diseases that would be carried around following a camp like that. The problems with sewage and taking care of the latrines. The insects, the malaria from mosquitoes. All those types of things were faced by people in ancient times, and they didn't have all of the inoculations and things that you and I might have, nor the medicines available. And so life expectancy was low. And David seems to be one who, even as fit as he might have been, still faced a lot of serious illnesses in his lifetime. Sometimes those illnesses are viewed by David in his Psalms as the result of the chastising hand of God upon him because of sin in his life. The same as we would look at it even today. that sometimes God chastens his children due to their sinful activity. Rather than obeying him, they are disobedient. And in chastising them, he might choose to use disease in order to accomplish that. Does that mean every disease is the result of the chastening hand of God? Absolutely not. All disease is not the result of sin. We find that out by looking at Job as one example. We have in the New Testament, in the Gospel of John, the example of the individual born blind. His affliction was not due to his sin nor to his parents' sin, Jesus said, but he was born that way that there might be glory given to Christ, who would be the one who would heal him. There's a number of different issues here, but they're put parallel here because all disease is the result of the presence of sin in the world. There would be no disease if we were still living in Eden without a fall. But the fall of man brings such things upon men. And then also personal disobedience and sin and transgression can bring the chastening hand of God that might utilize or employ disease. And so these are placed side by side, perhaps due to the psalmist's personal experience overall. Yes?
On the all diseases?
Yes.
Does any of that point to in your glorified body? That all your diseases will be healed because there will be no disease? Or
there's nothing here directly said to that. You'd have to look at other passages of Scripture to find the idea that all diseases will eventually, ultimately be healed and that the glorified body will not be subject to it. You would not find that here in this text. You could say there might be an implication, but only if you could demonstrate it from other passages. You wouldn't be able to demonstrate it from this one by itself. Okay? The fourth verse begins again with a cal active participle. Okay, verse 4. Hagoel. Mishachat. Haya Yaki. All right. Hagoel from the root Ga'al. Ga'al means he redeemed. There are two verbs for redeem in the Hebrew Bible. One is Ga'al. That's the word that is used, in fact, in participle form, just as it is here, for the kinsman redeemer in the book of Ruth. The Go'el. Go'el. That's the kinsman redeemer. Ga'al is used of a personal family relationship involved in the redemption. The other verb is pada. Pada, the pei, and a komets, daleth, and a komets, hey. Pada has exactly the same meaning, he redeemed, but it is related to the commercial transaction of a payment of a price or the purchase in order for there to be a redemption. Ga'al involves a commitment, like the kinsman redeemer for Ruth. The individual is committed to taking care of her needs and marrying her and fulfilling the office of kinsman redeemer as a relative. A payment did not necessarily exchange hands or take place. No price was paid other than personal commitment to fulfill the kinsman obligations. But pada always involves a price or payment involved. And there is a purchase. And so it is more the commercial picture. So when we look at these two terms within various contexts, we need to keep that in mind, that these are what are involved. The ransom payment, which is kofer, from the verb kafar, is what is paid by one who issues, who gives padas, if I can put it in English that way, padas. The one who padas gives a kofer. And that's from kafar, he covered. And kofer is related to Kippur, which is Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement. And the Day of Atonement is when a ransom is paid, when a price is given and the people are redeemed, pada. And because God is their father, so to speak, because they are related to him, they are his people, and he has a specific covenant relationship with them, he can use the verb ga'al of that same transaction, of that same relationship. So that's what's involved here. What's it's emphasizing here is that Yahweh has a personal relationship to his people in such a fashion that he is the one who plays the part of the kinsman redeemer. He is the one who fulfills his commitment to supply their needs. He is the one who will take care of anything that is involved, even if it should involve a purchase or payment of price. But the emphasis is not on the payment here or on the price or on any ransom. The emphasis here is on the relationship, the family relationship and the commitment. He is the one who redeems Mishachat from the pit or from corruption. Shachat has two different meanings. It can mean corruption, as in the decay of a body. It can mean the idea of the pit being the place where corruption takes place. Could be the grave, or it can refer to the place of the departed dead. But it's almost always utilized in the Old Testament of unbelievers, the place where unbelievers go. It is not used of a place where believers go, which then would indicate in such a setting that it would not refer just to the grave, because all go to the grave, whether believer or unbeliever. But Shachat seems to be always reserved for unbelievers. And in this context then, it is parallel in verse 3 to forgiving iniquity or guilt. And therefore here it could be a reference to the idea of the forgiving of sin in the redeeming of an individual spiritually, so that they do not go to the place of the departed unbelieving dead, to a place of corruption, not just the grave, but that place where they need redeeming from, because death will control them and they'll be given into a totally separate realm, separated from God. And so he is the one who redeems your life from the pit. In other words, you will not see the pit. You will not go to the pit, because he has redeemed you. And then the last phrase, we have ham-ak reki, and we know from this that because of the pointing with a doggish in the teeth, that this is a Puau participle, a Puau participle. And it is masculine singular, and it has a definite article, the he, and it has the second feminine singular pronominal suffix as its direct object. And the idea here is he is the one, or the one who adorns you, who clothes you, or some would take it as crown, because the noun related to the verbal root here, the ayin, taith, resh, eter, has to do with a crown. And so it's to clothe, to adorn, to crown you. And then we have chesed. Chesed, here as a noun, is in the accusative relationship, but it's an adverbial accusative. And so it's with, who crowns you with steadfast love, wirachamim, and compassion. The plural of rechem being used here to demonstrate the acts of mercy, the acts of compassion which God performs. And so he crowns you, he adorns you, he clothes you with steadfast love and compassion. Interesting here, the steadfast love and compassion then seems to carry on the emphasis of both the forgiving and the redeeming, and yet we can't leave out the healing. The healing has to be included. The compassion of God, the mercies of God, the steadfast, loyal love of God are demonstrated not just in the spiritual realm, but in the physical realm as well. Okay, any questions on this passage that you might have? Again, the key to this passage, these two verses, are these participles. These participles are talking about the characteristics of Yahweh, and it appears to be an explanation of his benefits that we saw at the end of verse 2, These are the benefits that the psalmist has experienced and that he is to praise Yahweh for. He is forgiven, he is healed, he is redeemed, and he is adorned with loyal love, steadfast love, and compassion. Those are indeed benefits, gemulai. Okay? Gemulim, if you're going to put it in the, other than my benefits, would be gemulim, the benefits. All right? Any questions? Jeff?
The late preposition again?
Pardon?
The late preposition, we're not...
The lamed preposition?
We're not translating that?
We're not translating it here where it is connected with a verb that with that makes it a direct object. It's just a sign of the direct object. Let me give you an example of that. If we look at salach, and if you have your holiday lexicon, we will turn there, and I'll put it up here on the screen so you can see it here as well. And on page 256, at the bottom of the right-hand column, notice we have salach, and notice it is used in the cow. The perfect form is given for the second masculine singular, spelled two different ways, once without a hey and once with a hey. It's found in the imperfect, and we have forms given here for the third masculine singular and first common singular. Then we have the cal imperative form given to us, and then the infinitive and the participle soleach, which is what we have in Psalm 103, verse 3. The subject, S-U-B-J period, the subject, we go to the top of the next column, is God. And the meaning in bold, practice forbearance, pardon, or forgive, used absolutely, which means without any connecting preposition, in 1 Kings 8 and verse, if I can get that in view here, 30 it looks like. And then with lamed and the person, and with lamed and the thing, or with lamed and the person and beit preposition of the thing, in these various examples. When you have the lamed that way being talked about, it's indicating then that it takes the direct object either without a preposition, absolutely, as in the first case, or by means of the lamed preposition. And the lamed preposition is used of persons and of things, but there are cases when you have the lamed of the person followed by the beit of the thing, and both of these are direct objects. In such cases, you do not translate the preposition. It is merely introducing the direct object. And the way to find that out is look in the lexicon and see if it gives that as one of the meanings. Now, if the preposition is to be translated as to, for, or some other way, then another translation would be inserted to tell you that the preposition is to be translated. But when it's not given, that means that that is just introducing the way to mark the direct object. And that's what we call a collocation. When we have a verb collocated, connected with, related to a following preposition, it can have a number of different usages. Sometimes it's introducing an adverbial prepositional phrase. Sometimes it's introducing the direct object. And certain verbs use a different preposition for the direct object. You saw that in Greek. You see that in Greek with regard to akuo, I hear. Whether it takes in, or whether it takes just the accusative, or whether it takes ace to introduce the direct object, indicates at times whether it is hearing with understanding or without understanding. But you don't translate the preposition after akuo in those situations. You just translate, I heard such and such, or so and so, and you do not translate the preposition. The same in Hebrew. There are times when the preposition will not be translated, especially in those cases where it is introducing the direct object. The lexicon is a key, plus context. In fact, context alone should give you sufficient information to know that. But the lexicon helps to confirm whether or not we've seen the context correctly. All right, any other question on that? Yes, Eric.
Verse 3, I want a key. Could you explain again why that's a second person pronominal suffix and not a first person?
It can't be first person because it has a kaf. First person never has a kaf involved in the suffix. Okay? And all the second person pronominal suffixes do have the kaf.
So the kaf is the main thing that gives it away, not the here it goes?
Correct. Absolutely. What's happened here is that, remember, normally we were expecting this type of usage. If we had, for example, your horse, it was su sake, your horse, feminine singular you. All right? But in this situation, where we have, I believe this way, we have a tseri here that would be equal to this. Why couldn't it be ewonake? Evidently, because of the way that we have the tseri here, and the way that this is constructed, the Hebrew ear did not like to have just ewonake. And so they changed it to where then this schwa becomes a hirik, actually a hirik yod. And it's just an alternate form of second feminine singular pronominal suffix, but you'll see it very often in poetry. And it also helps to add one more syllable in the word, so that if you need additional syllables to balance the lines poetically, so that they have an equal number of syllables or close to it, so you have balancing between lines, that helps to stretch the word and stretch the number of syllables. Okay? Anyone else? Any other questions? Okay, I trust that as we're looking at these, that you take the time to go back over these verses on your own, maybe to translate them, remember how they're translated, to gain vocabulary from them, to see vocabulary like awon that we've had before, like shakach that we had just today in the vocabulary quiz, and use this to help build your vocabulary, like ga'al. We've had that on a prior vocab quiz, but it's been a while. And so we've repeated it here. That makes it possible for us then, with the lengthy explanation I gave for the difference between pada and ga'al, for ga'al to be one of those words that would be chosen as a filler on a vocab quiz that doesn't have sufficient vocabulary in the textbook to fill up 15 slots. And with that as a transition, let's turn to the end of chapter 23 in your textbook and look at the vocabulary for the next quiz, which will be coming up on 1 week from today. And let's go through this, and please pronounce it after me. Samach. Samach means he was glad, he rejoiced. He was glad, he rejoiced. When we sing Hava Nagila, one of the things we get to is V'nismacha. V'nismacha is from this same root, samach, to be glad. He was glad, he rejoiced. A very common word used in Scripture, especially in the Psalms. Kiter. Kiter. Notice the doubling doggish in the middle radical. This tells you that this is a Puau form, even though we don't have it in parentheses for you, because the entire pointing is here. It actually occurs in the Puau, perfect, third masculine singular in the Hebrew Bible. Therefore, we provide it for you in that form. Kiter means he burned incense. He burned incense. It's not used of burning anything else. It's used of only burning incense. So you must have the incense as part of it, not just he burned. He burned incense. Notice there's no comma after the burned. The entire phraseology must be included. Re'ah. Re'ah is a noun meaning friend or neighbor. Friend or neighbor. In some contexts, it even means something more than just a neighbor. It means neighbor in the sense of a fellow human being. The same way that Jesus, in speaking in the Gospels, said that we are to love our neighbors as ourselves. And he was asked the question, who is my neighbor? And the obvious answer is that anyone is your neighbor. It's not just the man who lives next door to you. It's not used in the sense of next door residents. It's used in the sense of fellow human beings as neighbor. Yes?
Is this a segolate noun?
This is not a segolate noun. It is pronounced with an accent on that first because of the fact that you have a pathak under the ayin, and it's not treated here as necessarily a pathak furtive. The ayin could be taken as silent rather than as a strong guttural. It's a weak guttural. And so to make certain that it's not taken as an accent on the last syllable, it's accented on the first. And that accent tells you it is two separate syllables and not a pathak furtive. Because if it's a pathak furtive, remember, a pathak furtive doesn't count as a syllable. If you have the word ruach, spirit, this does not have an accent here. Why? Because this is not rucha. And this is not a syllable here. It's a half vowel. The pathak furtive is pronounced ahead of the chaf, and therefore there's really only one syllable here. So when you have rea with an accent, that's telling you that there are two syllables and that this is not a pathak furtive. And technically, when you transliterate it, you would not use this to divide the syllables. You would use this, not this. In other words, this is the symbol for the ayin in transliteration, the reverse apostrophe. Excuse me, it's the reverse apostrophe, right. I have to always keep that straight. Even though it's the first one, it begins if you're using it as a single quote. It's a reversed apostrophe. You do not put it after the vowel as though it were pathak furtive. If this were the case, then you couldn't divide the syllable. This is the proper syllable division and placement of the ayin because the pathak is being pronounced after the ayin. And that accent right there is your clue. Because if it's a one-syllable word, you don't need the accent. If the accent is there, it's because it is considered a two-syllable word. Okay? All right. Let's go to the second line, karav. Karav. Don't get this confused with kaver that we had today, he buried. If you're dyslexic, as I sometimes am, you can get this confused. But it's karav, not kaver. Karav means he came near or he approached. He came near or he approached. Karav. Very, very common. And then karev. Karev is derived from karav. It is a noun. It is a segolate noun. And it is, its meaning is midst, inward parts, inside. We had this in Psalm 103. My inward parts. Rasha. Rasha means wicked. This is used as both a noun and like a wicked person, a wicked one, a wicked man, a wicked woman. It's also used as an adjective. Then we have the shin beith ayin. And because it is not found in the nifal, in the kal, perfect, third masculine singular, it's not pointed for the listing in the lexicon. When it is used in the nifal, it means he swore. He swore. Roots. Roots. To do roots, you can't grow roots. All right, that's a good word association. Roots means to run. I find this very interesting because in German, raus means to run. And so you have roots, to run. And it would be a different form in he ran This is a middle vowel verb, and therefore we translate it as an infinitive. We translate it as an infinitive, just like we had sewer today. To turn aside, to turn back, to return, to go astray. Roots, to run. Shalom.
Shalom.
Shalom means peace or well-being. Peace or well-being. In Scripture, it rarely has the meaning of being without war. It mostly has the meaning of well-being. Of well-being. Radaf.
Radaf.
Radaf means he pursued when it is followed by something that has a genitive, and he persecuted if it's an accusative. If you have he is the pursuer of, then that pursuer of is to pursue, not to persecute. And there's different ways to have this identified, but keep that in mind, that in association with a genitive of the object, you have pursued. If it's the accusative, it's persecuted. And we'll leave that to some examples to give later on. But for the time being, all you have to remember is one of those two translations, and then keep in mind that it has both possible meanings, radaf. Chanok. Chanok is the proper name Enoch. Enoch, as in the individual who walked with God and who disappeared and was not. God took him in Genesis chapter 5. Okay, that gives us 11 words. There will be 4 more vocabulary words chosen for your quiz next Tuesday. I will not reveal what those 4 are, but they will be words that will be super common. I'll choose from the highest statistical category of words, and I'll be looking for words that you have had repeatedly in your translation exercises and you've had in vocabulary. There will not be something that is brand new or something you've seen only once or twice. It'll be a word that you've seen over and over and over again. For example, a word like melech. Melech, you've had many, many times. Ish, you've had many, many times. There should be no excuse for missing words like that. Those are the kind of words I intend to put into the vocabulary as the other 4 words. So if you need to, go back over and review and pay attention to the words that you've had and the words that have been repeated over and over again. Okay? Any questions on vocabulary for a week from today? All right. Let's take out exercise 22 then. Let's start with number 1. If you'll please read it aloud in Hebrew and then translate it for us.
Moshe Haya Roe 8 zone
Yitro.
Hotno Cohen
Kohen. Midian. Wa, because the wa you told. Wayin hag. Wayin hag. Acher. Hamidbar. Hamidbar. Now, one other thing. The Segol is pronounced as not a. So you have Moshe Haya Roeh Eth Tzon Yitro Hotno Kohen Midian Wayinhag Eth Hatzon Acher Hamidbar. All right? I know that's what you meant. You did a very good job, by the way. All right? Okay, go ahead and translate for us.
And Moses was tending the flock of Jethro after the priest of Midian, and leading the sheep behind the wilderness.
Okay, and Moses was tending. Notice we have Haya on your parsing sheet, your last parsing assignment. Haya is Cal perfect third masculine singular from Hey, Yod, Hey, meaning be. Ro'eh is a Cal active participle masculine singular from Resh, Ayin, Hey, meaning shepherd, or you could have had tend or pasture. And you put those two together, it's what we call a periphrastic participle that emphasizes the continuous aspect of it. And so you wouldn't know that at this point. So if you have down there that Moses shepherds the flock or the sheep of Jethro, that's not a problem. But technically it would be was tending or shepherding by context, the larger context, which you also don't have here. So the tense does not matter. And whether you use a present tense or whether you used ing does not matter here, because you have a limited context to work with, but make certain you've got the vocabulary. Moses was tending, Moses is tending, or Moses tends, or Moses tended the flock of, or the sheep of, for Tzon, of Jethro, his father-in-law. Okay? Chotno is from Chatan. Chatan means father-in-law. His father-in-law, the priest of Midian, the priest, because Kohen is in construct with Midyan. Midyan is a proper name, therefore definite. Therefore, the noun in construct with a proper name is definite. So it's the priest of Midian, not a priest of Midian. And then the Wayik Tol form, Wayin Hag, is a, you have to put it as a wow consecutive in the first set of columns on your parsing sheet. The wow consecutive. It is a Cal imperfect third masculine singular from Nun, Hey, Gimel, meaning lead. Lead, L-E-A-D. And should be translated as so he led, or thus he led, or therefore he led, or then he led the flock or the sheep behind the wilderness. If you translated wilderness as desert, that's fine. If you translate behind as west of, that is also fine, because that is how it is really being used. Achar is, the idea is if you are facing the east, you are properly oriented. Okay? To face the east is the prime direction in the Hebrew concept. Therefore, the east is lifnei, in front of. The west is achar, behind. All right? The south is yamin, the right hand. That's why you get the name Yemen as the name of the southernmost country in the boot of the Saudi peninsula. Yemen, it's the south. And then the left hand is the hand Shemuel is the north. The left hand is north. Okay? And that's why when the Israelites went to Shechem and did the covenant renewal ceremony, where they pronounced the curses and blessings of Deuteronomy 27 and 28, that is why you have the Mount of Blessing is the southern mountain, Gerizim, because the right hand is not the hand of cursing. The left hand is the hand of disfavor. The right hand is the hand of favor. And so Mount Gerizim, the Mount of Blessing, is the southern mountain across the valley there at Shechem. The northern mountain on the left hand is the Mount of Curses. And so Mount Ebal, the northern mountain, is where they would stand to pronounce the curses. You can identify which is which if you just face the east. And then your right hand is the hand of blessing, your left hand is the hand of cursing. I don't know if I've told you about it, but when we were in Bangladesh, I got hold of a biblical archaeology review. And here was a picture inside the church of the Holy Sepulchre in Jerusalem. And I saw immediately that the picture had been reversed in printing, that someone had reversed the negative, had flipped it over to where what was supposed to be on the right was on the left, and what was supposed to be on the left was on the right. How did I know that? Because it depicted Christ with his left hand raised in blessing. That would never be. It would be the right hand raised in blessing. Now, there were also other details that helped identify that. The inscription was reversed. Also, the sun was coming through the skylight at an impossible angle for that position on the globe and for the time of year in which it was taken. So all of the evidence put together said someone reversed it. So I sent the list of evidences, and they published my letter in response and apologized for my losing my sleep. But they said I was correct, that that was true. But that's one of the things you need to remember. The right hand is blessing. Now, that was easy for me in Bangladesh. In Bangladesh, in their society, you never wave at a person with your left hand. It's always the right. You never touch a person with your left hand. Because in that culture, now today it's not so true as it used to be, although it's still fairly true, especially in the villages, but even in the city, the left hand is for toilet paper. I mean, literally toilet paper. You wipe yourself after evacuation with your left hand. You wash yourself with the left hand. Therefore, you don't want anyone touching you with their left hand. All right? And you do not eat your food with your left hand in such a case either. So even if you're left-handed, you learn to use your right hand for eating your food, because the hand is God's best tool for eating. And in Bangladesh, they eat not with utensils, but with the hand. And so you just learn those things. Now, for us then, that became so ingrained that the minute I saw the picture, that was the first thing to strike me and to get my attention. That certainly they would not depict Christ, and at that time I'd not been to that church, never seen it before, except in pictures. I knew immediately it had to be reversed, because no one would depict Christ with his left hand raised in cursing. You know. So that's why the goats are on the left hand and the sheep are on the right hand. Right hand's the hand of blessing. All right. Any other questions on this first one? John.
I put Moses started shepherding. Is that okay?
No, it is not. I will not count it off at this point. I will just explain why. When you have the stative verb of to be, haya, when it is in the perfect, it's always a state of being. If it's in the imperfect, it's a state of becoming. And start would be a transition, and becoming, therefore, would have to be an imperfect. All right? But I need to repeat that a few more times before I start taking points off for it. Yes, Scott.
Regarding Kohen, Midian, how do you know that that is construct? I mean, I assume that it's the accent, because Kohen...
The accent is your best clue.
But that's not a every time thing.
No, the context is the very next clue, because it doesn't make sense unless you take it as a construct.
Could it be the Midian priest?
Well, that'd still be the same thing. That is still an interpretation it takes as construct, because you're taking Midian as defining what the priest is.
But that's acceptable.
Oh yes, if you have the Midianite priest, that's fine, but it has to be the Midianite priest, not a Midianite priest, because it is a construct relationship that is definite.
Is it Midian acceptable as opposed to Midianite?
Yes, I'll accept it, but technically it'd be Midianite. Okay, I'll accept it, but technically it'd be Midianite. Yes, Dennis?
How do we know it's definite, the construct is definite?
Because Midian is a proper noun. It's a name. Proper nouns are always definite. Names are always definite. All right, let's go to number 2 of exercise number 22. And Gus, it's your turn to read and to translate.
Wyomer, Anoki, Elohim,
Vica. Notice the double dots above the beth. That's the accent. So it's Vica.
Avika, Elohim, Abraham, Elohim,
Yitzhak.
We Elohim,
Welohei.
Welohim, Yaakov, We Yos.
Okay, Waya, no sapathic. Wayaster.
Moshe,
Panau, okay? So it's Vayomer Anoki Elohe Avika, Elohe Avraham, Elohe Yitzchak, Welohe Yaakov, Vayaster Moshe Panau. All right? Go ahead and translate it for us, Gus.
And he will say, I am the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. So Moses hid his face.
Okay, two things. Number one, notice the reference is in Exodus chapter 3, verse 6. And notice that we have wayik tolls used, and wayik tolls are normally used in narrative. And narrative is normally reporting past events. So it should be past tense. All right? Then, or so, or thus, or therefore. Remember, because wayik toll, showing sequence. Therefore, he said, I am the God of your father. The God, because the fact that you have a pronominal suffix on the noun of, father. It's your father. That makes it definite. Remember, a pronominal suffix makes a noun definite. And so in this construct relationship between Elohe and Av, Avika, then Elohe will have to also be definite. So it's the God of your father, the God of Abraham, because Avraham is a proper name, therefore definite. The God of Isaac, because Yitzchak is a proper name. And the God of Jacob, because Jacob is a proper name. And then we translate the next conjunction as so Moses hid his face, or then Moses hid his face. Notice that when you have what is said, you put that in double quotes. Then he said, double quote, I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob, period, end of double quote. So Moses hid his face. Okay? Questions? Yes, David.
Does the Hirik Yod and Avika make it plural?
No, it does not make it plural. It's not the God of your fathers. The Hirik, if to be God of your fathers, that would be a tsere, or excuse me, it wouldn't be a tsere. It would be vot. It'd be avot, because it's an irregular noun and takes the feminine plural ending. So it'd be avote ka. And so here it's what it is on the nouns of relationship, like brother and father. The Hirik Yod is how the genitive singular is pointed. It's the ancient Semitic ending E to represent the genitive. But it's singular, not plural.
It's because of the form of the word, because that is the
Correct.
standard.
It's because of the form of the word. In fact, if you take your holiday lexicon and look at Av, this is Av is the very first word listed in the lexicon on the first page. Notice Av, construct is given as Av. But notice else, and that's in Genesis 17:4 and a dagger. That means the construct Av is found only in Genesis 17:4. Elsewhere, it is avi for the construct. With a suffix avi, avika, avihu, avi, avinu, avikim. And then plural is after that. Avot. The construct evot, and the suffix on the plural is evotai. So the lexicon tells you that avika is the singular form, not the plural. That's why those examples are given to you there at the top of the lexicon. And to also tell you the only place in the entire Hebrew Bible av is used of the construct singular is in Genesis 17 verse 4 and nowhere else. Okay? So when you run across something like that and you're saying, well, that's not normally what I'm used to seeing. I'm used to seeing a tsere yod for a masculine plural construct ending. Look it up and check. And you'll find out that the Hirik Yod is a singular construct ending on this noun. You'll find the same thing with the word for brother. Ach will be the exact same situation. Okay? Anyone else? Any other questions on number 2? Exercise 23 is due on Thursday. Let's take a look at it. It has to do with chapter 23, it has to do with the hithpael conjugation. You have 4 sentences to translate. You also have some review exercises attaching the definite article with the correct pointing to 10 words, to attach the interrogative he with correct pointing to 10 words, and the interrogative pronoun ma to 10 words. And then you have some forms to parse on the basis of just the prefixes, the vowel pointings, or the suffixes, which is an exercise that is to enable you to look for clues. And the boxes represent any 3 consonants from the Hebrew alphabet. So it doesn't matter what word root it's from. They all take the same pointings, they all take the same prefixes, they all take the same suffixes. And that's the main thing you want to learn and look for, is those prefixes or suffixes. For example, as you look at number 1 there with the 3 boxes and with the tau with the Komets under it at the end, what do you know about that word, regardless of what the 3 consonants are in the word, regardless of its meaning as a word? What do you know about this word? What's one thing? It's a perfect. It's a perfect. It is cal because of the other pointings that are there. But the ta on the end tells you it's a perfect no matter what stem it is. And it's a perfect what? Perfect what person? Second, masculine, singular, because it's the same as the personal pronoun a, ta. Okay? So ta is the second masculine singular suffix on perfect verbs. So you know immediately it's a perfect second masculine singular just by that suffix. And then you determine the stem or the conjugation of that, whether it's cal, pl, puau, nifal, hifil, hafal, hithpael. You determine that by the other things. And you notice immediately that there are no prefixes. That rules out hithpael. It rules out hifil and hafal and nifal. That leaves only pl and puau. So as you look at the remaining vowels, you have a, a. A, a. That doesn't sound like pu-al, does it? There's no u. It doesn't sound like p-al, does it? The only thing remaining is cal. So again, just knowing the names of the 7 conjugations of the Hebrew verb, or stems, you can call it either one, helps you to determine it, because you know it's a perfect, so you know the names are the clue. If it's a perfect, the names are the clue to identify it further. And so this is a cal perfect second masculine singular. So follow those through and think those through carefully on what's happening. And don't forget, some of the forms can have more than one parsing. So include all the potential parsings, not just one of them. Looking at the 4 sentences here for translation, the 4 verses for translation. Number 1 should have no difficulties for you. It has no surprises. Number 2, the only surprise here is the way that this verb is pointed. Let me just walk you through it. You know that wayinahem is a wayiktol, because the way. Wayiktol means it's imperfect. So you know it's a wow consecutive. You know it's an imperfect. And assuming that the nun, cheth, and mem are all of the consonants of the root, then you know that there's no suffix, which means, and a yod prefix, which makes it a third masculine singular. Now, you look at the hirik under the yod, you look at the doggish in the nun, and you look at the komets under the nun, and what is that? The nifal triangle. That then gives you the remainder of your parsing. Okay? Always watch for that. This is an exercise on hithpael, but it doesn't mean that all forms will be hithpael. Let's go further here. I don't think there's anything more in that line that should cause you a problem. Remember what the pronominal suffixes look like on nouns, and it'll help you in that second translation. Number 3, there's no real problem here. The Komets, Aleph, in that second verb, wayirpa, the Doggish is in the pay because you have a closed syllable ahead of it, because it has a silent schwa. The hirik under the yod is in a closed syllable that's unaccented, therefore it's a short vowel. The schwa under the resh is silent, therefore the begad kafaf letter has to take the hardening Doggish. The resh pei aleph is the root, and so this is not a piel because the piel doesn't have a hirik under the yod prefix. And the Komets aleph is there because the aleph, being a guttural, prefers an A-class vowel, so don't let that throw you. Emphasize the prefix and you'll be all right. Evimelech, what does it sound like? Abimelech. It's a noun, proper name. Anytime you have a word that runs so long, may end up being a noun. I think we can leave everything else as is. You may struggle a little bit with the last word on number 3, but I want you to struggle. I want you to learn how to use your lexicon to try to resolve the issue and see how you come out on that. I will not be overly strict on it, on grading, but I want you to struggle through it. Number 4 is actually 2 verses. And once you get started on this, I would think this is a dead giveaway, because it's one of the most familiar verses in all the Old Testament outside of Psalm 23. And use your lexicon to help you in anything that gives you trouble. All right, any questions on exercise 23? Okay, that's due on Thursday, the next time we meet. Let's turn now to chapter 24 in your textbook. Chapter 24 in the textbook, dealing with verbal suffixes for the perfect. The perfect is also known as the katal, so that's used in the heading. On the exegetical insights, using Genesis 4:14, notice the hain. Hain can have the meaning of behold. Geirashta, here we have a piel. The tsere under the gimel is the heightening of the hirik because of the rejection of the doubling Doggish in the resh, which sometimes behaves as a guttural, and gutturals refuse doubling. The ta is your clue, because the ta is second masculine singular suffix for a perfect verb. So we know it's a perfect verb, and so as you look at it, that tsere is the second clue. It tells you it's a PL perfect, second masculine singular. Garash means to drive out. Oti. Oti is the particle eth with a first common singular pronominal suffix. But notice it's not iti. Remember, if you go back and you do a review of how the pronominal suffixes go on the definite article, on the marker for the direct object, you notice the eth becomes a hirik and a Doggish in the tau, and then the hirik yod for iti if it means with me. And one of the things that we pointed out at that time was the clue here. Remember the I in with. The I in with is the I class vowel in iti. But if we take that same eth and we decide to keep it as the direct object marker, and we want to add the suffix to it, we go to a holum, and it becomes oti. Okay? Oh, in fact, it's without the Doggish. Okay, oti. And remember, this is the direct object, and what we pointed out is this holum is the same as the O. All right? So that's your clue. If you have the eth marker with a pronominal suffix, look at its first vowel. If the first vowel is a hirik, it's the preposition with. If the first vowel is a holum, it's still the direct object marker. And so here it is, behold, you drove me. You drove me out. Hayom, today. Me'al panei ha'edama, literally from upon the faces of the ground. In other words, from the surface of the earth. And it's not taken here literally, it's hyperbole. It's not that he's sent to the moon or to Mars. It's the idea that he's separated from his normal place of residence. He's driven out from all those others who are around him. Notice this is Genesis 4, so we're talking about whom? Cain. We're talking about Cain, how God drove him out. And from your face, umipaneka, from you, from before you, esater, I am hidden. Sater, to hide. And here we have the nifal triangle, the segol instead of a hirik because it's under the aleph, the doggish, doubling doggish in the Samic, assimilating the noon of the nifal, and the komets under it. Wehayiti, haya, the verb to be, when we look at it, we see it ends in a hey. But historically, any verb that ends in a hey, for example, the verb asa, he made, he did, could be a final yod verb. Okay? The final hey is the same as a final yod, and they may have originally been final yod. And in some forms of the verb, that yod will return. And here it returns. The the ending tells you it's first common singular perfect of the verb. First common singular perfect of the verb. And it's from haya, hey, yod, hey. And so it's, and I am na. Na is the idea of a fugitive, wanad, and a wanderer, ba'aretz, in the earth. Wehaya, and it will be, haya here being used as the state of being verb, and it shall be kol motza'i. Motza'i, the name with a holum tells you it's a kal active participle masculine singular with a hirik yod suffix, meaning first common singular, just like it would be on a noun. Remember, participles take noun endings, and here it's the pronominal suffix that'd be possession, and here being used rather than possession, not just finders of me, but those who, any who find me as the direct object. All who find me, yahargeni, will kill me. Harag is the verb, hey, resh, gimel. The reason we have, and this is a kal, imperfect, third masculine singular, agreeing with any or all who find me. And the ni suffix is the direct object, pronominal suffix, me, shall kill me. The reason for a pathic instead of a hirik under the yod is why? Why is there pathic under the yod instead of a hirik in the kal imperfect here? Anyone? The guttural. The guttural hey prefers A-class vowels. So a pathak is put under it, and therefore a pathak is also used in the prefix instead of a hirik. You can expect that anytime a verb begins in its root with a guttural, that the hirik normally found in the kal will become a pathic in the kal. you can distinguish it from the hifil that does the same thing by means of looking internally and seeing whether or not there's a hirik yod infix between the second and the third root letters. And there is none here between the resh and the gimel. There's a schwa. All right. Now, look at page 146. Look at the suffixes, the verbal suffixes. And what we're showing here is what they look like attached to the regular form of a cal verb. You can look at the very basic vowel changes that take place, but notice that the first common singular verbal suffix, which becomes then the object of a verb, is, and there's a problem here. Why is that? That should not be. Do you all on your suffixed form have really the identical form or close to the same form in the regular form? That suffixed form should have a further explanation to it. And the explanation should be, these are the vowel changes that take place in order to add the pronominal suffix. It is not the full form. To see the full form, you have to look on page 147. And I trust all of you have the chart there on 147. And you can go across the top there, and you can see katal t as first common singular verb form in the left-hand column. And it does not give a form to add the first common singular pronominal suffix because it doesn't happen. I do not do something to me in the cal. That's the reflexive or the middle, and that'll have to be hithpael or nifal or hafal or puau. It cannot be an active verb. That's why you don't have a first common singular pronominal suffix on a first common singular cal verb. You will have it on other verb forms. Kataltika, notice, is what it looks like to add the second masculine singular. I killed you. I killed you. Kataltika. Notice that the T remains, but notice it's no longer katalti, it's kataltika. And that's why the chart on the opposite page shows you that the change goes from shamarti to shemarti. And then you just add it. Shemarti ni would be what it would be, or shemarti ka would be what it would be. But all it's showing you there is the suffixed form without the suffix. It should be the preparatory form for the suffix form in that chart on page 146. So look more carefully at the chart on 147, realizing that this is where you look to see what the suffixes themselves look like. Look down at the third masculine plural pronominal suffix on the first common singular there in the lower left-hand corner, the second line from the bottom on page 147. Kataltim. Remember, hem is they and them. And remember, we had am as a pronominal suffix, like on their horse, susam. The meme all by itself, then, on this hirik yod meme is not a masculine plural noun ending here. It's a verb, katalti, first common singular, perfect first common singular, and the meme is the third masculine plural pronominal suffix on it. Okay? So it's I killed them. Okay? And if the them is feminine, then the noon is used in that last form on the end, in place of hein, heina, for they, them in the feminine plural. So go through these suffixes, these noun suffixes. Notice that they're virtually identical to the same suffixes that you learned to put on nouns. They're virtually identical, the same things you learned to put on nouns. There are only a few changes here and there, like the noon being used as a connector. If you look up there in the second column, on the second masculine singular perfect verb, katalta, it becomes kataltani. The ni is the first common singular pronominal suffix. The noon being used as the connector to connect them. Okay, because you can't have kataltai or ta'i, two vowels in a row.